What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Monday show, gang. Money Monday, as Obi-Wan's saying in the chat. I like that. Kind of thought I should have started this one at 4:20 today. Tried to get everything done and complete so that I could be here with 2-3 minutes to spare before a 4:15 start, but we fell behind by a couple of minutes. So we're just getting everything set up here. Everything's rolled out on the site. Stephen Leibowitz says he lives. Yeah, a couple minutes late, bud. Everything's up on the site. Articles updated. Key points, kind of an article for the big 12-game slate. Lot to go through, lot to talk about. We've got the home run picks are up on the site. The power index, the stacks board, everything's up to date. Everything's up and running over on rotoscouts, so making sure you guys are checking that out. If you're not familiar with the site, it's rotoscouts.com. Twitter handle's at rotoscouts. Make sure you're following that. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe on this channel. Hit the little thumbs up, the bell down there. And then if you're clicking over to Twitter, to X, give the little love to that at rotoscouts handle. Give that some likes, some hearts, some retweets, so on and so forth. Engagement is great if you want to talk back on there. It seems like engagement is the thing you're supposed to go for. I know they're paying people out. If you pay them, they pay you kind of a thing these days. Seems like a lot of people are really going for that. A lot of people just trying to generate pointless clicks on that X these days. Matt Tomlinson says, got volume. Got volume in that you can't hear me? What do you mean, Matt? As far as I know, I'm broadcasting and you guys can hear me. Trey doesn't have volume. Okay, I missed Trey's comment. Somebody give me a high sign. Let me know that you can hear me. Be bad if you couldn't. Huh. Trey, maybe your speakers aren't plugged in? Maybe you should reload YouTube? Maybe the volume's turned off? Just a couple quick suggestions. Do you have the tab muted by any chance? That one got me on the first show that Gunn and I tried to do together. I had the tab muted for Discord. Everybody else says it sounds good, so I'm going to keep on rolling. Trey, hopefully you can catch up. Somebody tell Trey what I said, because I just realized I was talking to him and he can't hear me. So, interesting slate here. I think there's a lot to go through. Let me get the sheet rolled up here. Got to get some lineups in. We'll try and grab the lineups as we hit each of these games. Looks like we've got a fair amount of them. So let's just kind of dive in. I think it makes sense to just get a quick as possible at this point. Whoops. That's not helping. Get as quick as possible a jump on this thing. And let's just start talking. First game on deck doesn't look like we've got any lineups for this one. The other thing I forgot to do was check the weather as usual. Let me pull that up real quick. Seems like it was a mostly nice day from the limited notes on the one site. So Colorado's the only game with quote-unquote legitimate delay potential, according to Mr. Roth. Well, Colorado's going to be weird anyway. Seems like everything else is clean. So this first one on deck, Michael Kopech against Grayson Rodriguez. Actually, you know what? Since Rodriguez is kind of an interesting talking point for the pitching slate overall, let's just start by looking at the pitching board. I think this is always a good place to start, good place to end. Say hi to everybody, too. I didn't really go through. I said hi to a couple people, dealt with some tech support, hopefully. But we've got Fanatic here. We've got Tomlinson's here. We've got Salty Old Man's here. We've got Lambert here. We've got Leibowitz here. We've got Larry C. Black Main's here. What's up, Black Main? Who else is here? Travis Duarte's here. Mike Palm's here. Monty Pritchett. Show Country. Charles Vidal. Bill Byers. Dimitri, one of our regular winners. Another good win for Dimitri the other day. Shouted it out on Twitter. We also had Lone Wolf. Had a little pop the other day. I haven't seen Lone Wolf today, but I'm sure he's around. I know he's in Discord earlier today. Had a nice little pop over the weekend. Couple $100. Not bad. Shouted it out on Twitter. Anytime you guys hit one of those, if you feel like shouting it out, it's always, gives me something to retweet, gives us something to get a little attention on it. So it's always nice. So, all right, let's get into this. So, Kevin Gausman with a bullet, top of the slate. Seems like a killer spot for going up against the Nationals. I think he's well worth the money that you're going to pay to get to him. I think he's probably worth the weight of ownership that you're going to get on him in that spot. But I do think we've got a lot of options. There's a couple interesting ones going down the board. Brian Wu, Andrew Abbott. We got to get the pitches out of both of those guys, but I think we've got effective enough pitch counts for both of those options. Wu going up against the Athletics. That's basically a 5 and change inning projection. I think he's got a realistic upside to hit it with a little bit of ceiling beyond that. Andrew Abbott, I question that one a little bit more. 10.398 is just a really, really high price to pay in that spot for Abbott, but there's definitely strikeouts on board for him. He's been pitching fairly well overall. I do think there's a chance that he gets to that type of a level. You get John Gray against the Mets, kind of a middle price, middle projection, a little bit more value for him on the DK board at just 8,100. Blake Snell, tough matchup against the Cardinals on a talent perspective, but not on an outcomes based in the standings, but a tough matchup, man for man going through that lineup hitters wise, who he's got to face. But he projects out very well also for the money. Definite potential for Blake Snell, assuming he pitches fairly efficiently. Grayson Rodriguez, obviously a very strong spot here against the White Sox. A little bit projected, a couple points behind the top end options there, but I love the price. I like the pitcher quite a bit, and I like the opportunity for him. Kyle Harrison, I do not think we're getting enough pitches to get to even the level that he's projected out. I cut that down. That's a 4.5 inning projection. He's going like 75, 80 pitches tonight. He is one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. He was trying to break his way out of the top of the entire slate today. He came through the model with like 7 and change innings. I cut that down because obviously he's on a pitch count. He's not going anywhere near that deep. Was pulling one of the highest projections on the board. But even when I tried to wrangle it in, he's still, banging on the top of the box here trying to get out. So weird spot for Harrison. They did say it's not necessarily a hard pitch count. They kind of suggested like we don't know exactly where we're going to cut him off, which just to me says 5 innings. Right? Give the kid 5. If it happens to take him 85 pitches to get through 5, I think they'll do that. But I think we're capped around that level. I think they're just looking for the kid to get some experience here. They're really gingerly bringing him along. So, and they spoke to that in the manager's quote. It was, speaking to that. So, little bit dicey on the overall for Harrison there, and probably no ceiling behind like this level of projection. Kenta Maeda, I think, is a very good option against that Cleveland team. They're fairly low strikeout, as we know. Excuse me while I adjust the camera while I talk here. I know I'm in a little box up at the top of your screen, but realized I was kind of pointing just up at the top, so it was looking like a little Gundacker action. Maeda against the low strikeout Guardians, I think it's a good spot. He's got to find his strikeouts along the way, but certainly capable of doing it. Bobby Miller is an interesting option, but a tough matchup against the Diamondbacks for price. Chris Sale, I think the Astros side of that one comes through. I'm kind of concerned about the spot for Chris Sale. He projects out okay, but I don't love the value based, where he projects for the money. Bryce Elder in Colorado is kind of a no. Oviedo, I think, is maybe on your value board on DK at 7,300 against Kansas City. And then burying the lead by far, Zach Gallen all the way down here in a tough matchup against the Dodgers, 10-7, 10-5. Just seems like he's, obviously he's got ceiling beyond this, but the Dodgers are really getting to him in the projections today. This hasn't happened to him all season in other matchups with this team and other good teams. We haven't seen him get undercut like this by the model, so I'm not sure exactly what's causing it today, but it was a full inning sample when I double checked that. So just kind of a middling option projection wise. Obviously there's more ceiling on Zach Gallen than there is on like an Oviedo, Xavier Curry, a Michael Kopech, a Josie Gray, and Tyler McGill, and these guys. Definitely has more capability on the mound, but for the money, that's really limited, and it's a very tough matchup against the Dodgers, obviously. Curry, minor play, definitely on the value board, I think. If you get 5-6 innings against that Twins team, 6,000, 5,700, I think you can find a handful of strikeouts. Not a great option by any means, but a value dart. Kopech, limited, but maybe on that value board at 63 on DK. There's a lot of mid-priced and good value options, though. So I don't know how many times we want to go to him against Baltimore. Baltimore's carrying the highest non-course total, if I remember correctly, on the slate. So really limited appeal there. Limited appeal for Josiah Gray in a tough matchup. And then we get into just like the dregs of the slate. Christian Javier all the way down bottom here. 9,100, 8,500. He's also mispriced just for how bad he's been this season for a terrible matchup against the Red Sox in Fenway Park. Just doesn't look like the spot for Javier to succeed. I think I'm throwing Red Sox bats at him. That's a both-sided hitting situation for me. I'm taking my shots with Houston against Chris Sale. I'm taking my shots with Boston against Javier. And then the bottom of the board, Kyle Muller, Adam Wainwright, or the ghost of Adam Wainwright, Austin Gomber. Ghost of Adam Wainwright still outperforming Austin Gomber in the Coors game. I'll give him that. Interesting slate. Lot of directions this one could go. So let's get into the game by game a little bit here. I'm going to try and make fairly good time. I do want to have a little time to build lineups since it's such a big slate. I know I say that, and we go till 6:15, 6:20 on a lot of these. I'm going to try and punch this out by like a quarter till. So we'll see how we do. I'm going to keep an eye on chat, but I am going to try and roll through some of this. So Rodriguez pitching pretty well since the return to action. He gave up a home run in each of his last 2 starts, but since that mid-July return to the show, he's been pretty good overall. On the whole, 5.38 ERA, but a much better 3.92 xFIP, a 24.3% strikeout rate. He's given up a decent amount of premium contact and power, 44% hard hits, 8.9% barrels, 4.01% home run rate on the year, but that had been no home runs going into 2 starts ago since the return. So it was like 4 or 5 starts with 0 home runs since he came back. Now he's given up 1 in each of the last 2 starts, but I think there's plenty of upside, particularly for the money, particularly at 75 on DK. I think he's one of the better SP2 options on the board. Then you get 8,700 on the FanDuel slate. Puts him in play on the single starter site. My hope is that he goes a little bit under-owned for that money because he's more of like a tweener. He's not exactly at the top of the board, not exactly at the bottom of the board salary-wise. So I really like the spot for Rodriguez. If you saw me grimace a second ago, their Joker was over here, and I was petting him, and my finger was in his collar, and he went back like that. It just twisted the shit out of my finger a second ago. He just left the room, though. I think he knows what he did. Michael Kopech on the White Sox side of things looks to me like a target for Orioles bats. Like I said, they're carrying one of the highest implied team totals in Vegas. It's a very good lineup that I kind of like going to for DFS purposes at this point. They've been rolling through the season. You get a shot at Kopech. 22.8% strikeout rate, but a 4.95 ERA and an even worse 5.63 xFIP. Big problem with walks. He's walked a ridiculous 15% of hitters over 120 innings, 24 starts, a 1.49 whip. Way too much premium contact at 13.6% barrels, 5.23% home runs. Seems like a target for a team that's pretty good at getting themselves to first base, that has plenty of power through the lineup. Everybody in this lineup except for Ramon Urias, who does have a little bit of pop in that bat, has double-digit home runs into the mid-teens. Some of these guys have missed a little time, like Ryan Mountcastle missed some games, only 408 plate appearances, 18 home runs, a major source of right-handed power, premium contact in that lineup, leads the team with 13.6% barrels in the small sample. 4,700, 3,100 is cheap for Ryan Mountcastle's upside for his ceiling against this starter. Anthony Santander, 4,200, 3,500, very cheap on the DK slate in the outfield. 24 home runs on the season at 224 ISO, creating runs 20% better than average. You get Gunnar. He was my home run pick from the team. Not for the overall slate, but from the team. Leads the second on the team, at 8.48, behind Santander at 8.52 in the home run model. Ryan Mountcastle, 7.65. You've got Adley up at the top, who pretty confident Adley can draw a walk against the guy walking 15% so far this season. Probably not strike out, put the ball in play 2 or 3 times, draw 2 or 3 walks, possibly a shot at a home run. I really like the spot for Adley Rutschman. Where you have to play catchers, he's the most valuable guy in the sport because he leads off, he gains plate appearances, he plays every single day. 557 plate appearances as a young catcher. That's outstanding. 5,400. He's priced appropriately for that, but he's very valuable where you need catchers. 3,200 on FanDuel, easily playable on this team. There's a lot of mix and match positioning. Ryan O'Hearn, Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Urias, Adam Frazier, all these guys from here down are playable. Playable to very good. Like Cedric Mullins is beyond playable. He's a 30-30 talent. 12 home runs, 15 steals this year, a 114 WRC+. Austin Hayes, an up and down kind of a season. Started the season really strong, had most of these home runs earlier in the year. Cooled off significantly, but still sits 279, 328, 455 with a 114 WRC+. Good mid-range power. So I like the options up and down this Orioles lineup. It looks like it just dropped in the last 2 minutes as I've been talking about it. Adley, Gunnar, Santander, Mountcastle, O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins, Ramon Urias, Adam Frazier, and Ryan McKenna slotting into that last spot in the lineup. So it's who's not in there? Hayes? No Hayes. So Hayes comes out. Long list of none. No confirmed lineups dropped in. So we're going to be doing this a lot as we go through this show. Grab these guys too while we're here.
All right, so Hayes comes out. Mullins moves up to 6, where I like him even better. Gains a little bit of ground. Potentially, additional quarter plate appearance goes through the model or whatever. Urias does have a little bit of pop late in the lineup. Frazier, a weird home run total this year. Moderately effective guy. McKenna, very low end guy, but 2,000, 2,100. Mixer in the outfield at worst. 83 WRC plus over 128 with 2 homers, 2 steals. Mix and match options down the end of the lineup, but 1 through 7, this plays pretty strong. 1 through 6, it plays very strong. White Sox side of things, very limited appeal, particularly with what this park does to right-handed power. Even if Rodriguez makes some mistakes, obviously Luis Robert can go deep in any park against anybody. He doesn't need the help, but this park does limit right-handed power even for very, very good righty power hitters. He's got a 13.55 in the home run model. That's one of the leading marks on the entire day. He's got 34 on the season at 289 ISO, but he's really the one fearsome hitter in this lineup right now. Eloy Jimenez has been up and down this season. He does have a pretty good contact profile, 15 home runs, 275, 323, 449. When he's healthy and in the lineup, he's a very good star caliber player, or maybe a tier below a star, but a very, very good right-handed power hitter. But the output's been marginalized this season by some of his injuries. He's been up and down at the plate overall. 38-28, he is very affordable if you're going to White Sox bats, but he's not like a reason to go to White Sox bats. He's just a good play amongst a bunch of bad ones on their team. Joan Moncada, Gavin Sheets down the lineup, so you don't even get the version of the lineup with Andrew Vaughn in it. Takes a righty power bat out of the lineup, replaces him with lefty Gavin Sheets, who's kind of limited at the plate. 9 home runs, 216, 286, 360, a 74 WRC plus. Vaughn's just a better overall hitter than Gavin Sheets. Lenyn Sosa, Oscar Colas. We talked about Corey Lee's sneaky power potential at the plate for 2,300 on the DraftKings slate, 21 on FanDuel. If you're going to White Sox, you probably include Corey Lee and some of them on the DK slate as a very, very cheap catcher. A very minor mix-in on the FanDuel board. Timmy Anderson, Andrew Benintendi, both scuffling off the top of the lineup. 62 WRC plus for Tim. He did steal his 12th base recently. 97 WRC plus for Benny. He did hit his 4th and 5th home runs recently. 13 steals, but very limited output for those two guys. So Baltimore bats, Grayson Rodriguez. Very limited shares of White Sox. Very limited interest in Michael Kopech. If you wanted to throw a couple Kopech darts, 6,300, you're probably just wasting those lineup spots. There's a lot of guys on the board at similar pricing that project out a lot better against a team that's not one of the leading run totals in Vegas on the day. 22.8% strikeouts is fine to chase, but way too many walks, way too much premium contact, high runs allowed. Just hasn't been a good season overall. Nationals. Let's grab the lineups here. Lone Wolf's here. What's up, Lone Wolf? Stephen Leibowitz says Giants are not bad, about the same record as the Reds. I don't know what you guys are talking Abbott there. Having Abbott's advanced stats made him seem more lucky than his actual stats, if I'm remembering right. Yeah, we haven't seen him all that recently in any main slate action. So I haven't really talked about him all that much in his last couple of outings. But yeah, I believe that's still true across the board for Abbott. But there is strikeout potential there. There are strikeouts supported by that Giants lineup. It's a pretty good pitching environment. So he gains ground from that. But we'll get into that one, Steve. Greg Bean Cones here. Loves this slate. I like the slate a lot too. Kevin O says, site growing? I hope so, Kev. Spread the word, buddy. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes. Helps us grow, helps us spread the word. Obviously, following the Twitter handle, retweeting those things, liking those things helps spread the word as well. Let me grab lineups for this second game here. So, very, very limited interest in going to any Nationals, even as a contrarian position. I just don't really like it. I know there are some frisky hitters in this lineup, but we're really limited to options like C.J. Abrams, Lane Thomas, Joey Meneses, and Keibert Ruiz off the top of the lineup here. There's such little appeal through this bottom half that even in a contrarian sense, I don't really think we need to go to many Nationals here. Grab a couple of stacks of those guys up top if you want. Put them together with your Brave stacks and get cheap and get to differentiated options. But like even 49, 48, 5,000 for these three hitters, it's not exactly a massive discount. That's around where those guys ought to be priced. They're not exactly stars. Abrams, 92 WRC plus on the season, but a 110 WRC plus in his 100 and change plate appearances in the leadoff role. Definitely a little bit better since they've moved him to the leadoff spot. Correlates well with Thomas and Meneses. These are their two best hitters, 283, 332, 474, 282, 330, 415. 117 WRC plus and a 103, 20 homers, 16 steals, 11 homers, 0 steals. These are your quality bats. Here's your sneaky catcher power. 15 home runs for Keibert Ruiz, nothing we haven't talked about before. 4,100, 2,600, plays almost every day, 445 plate appearances, just below average for run creation. The contact profile isn't great, but there is a better X slug than an actual slug. His 418 actual. Let's see what he's actually at this year. At this point, let me make sure that's still true. The X slug is 437. So he's crept up. He's normalized the actual a little bit more, but we're still a little bit higher on the expected slugging than the actual. But a decent, mid-teens catcher power, upside for more in the next few seasons. Dom Smith, okay with the hit tool, okay with the on base at 330, not creating runs, not hitting for any kind of power. 485 plate appearances of mediocrity for Dom Smith. Ilamato Vargas, 74 WRC plus. Jake Alous, 69. Alex Call, 72, with most of his quality coming against lefties. Jacob Young, bottom of the lineup, 2,200, 2,000 as a mixer. Kevin Gausman, 11-2, 10-9, is absolutely the top of the pitching board. 31.7% strikeout rate, leads the slate. 150 and a third innings in 25 starts. Tremendous depth in basically every start. Gives you upside to both win bonuses, or both bonuses, the win and the quality start. Giving up a little bit of premium contact. 12.2 degree average launch. We don't really care that much about the premium contact here because it's only led to 2.60% home runs, and there's rarely anybody on when he gives up one of these. 10.5% barrels, 44.6% hard hits, pushing almost 90 miles an hour of exit velo. If he makes a mistake, maybe it travels, but there's very limited hitters to exploit that here. So I'm not really worried about any of the premium contact, and he's been very good at limiting the home run output. 3.23 ERA, a 3.06 xFIP, very good with swinging strikes. Just a top-end pitcher for a top-end price, but I think we go there. I think it's easy enough to roster him around the field. You can make decisions like Kevin Gausman versus the field's ownership, Coors Field bats versus the field's ownership, and set your exposures appropriately to where you want to be relative to the field. I think that's just the correct way to make the decision about both of those options on this slate. They're both pretty obvious slate leading options that a lot of people will be going to, but I think they're well worth their salaries and their weight of popularity. That's every single Braves hitter and Kevin Gausman. Putting them together in lineups probably going to be pretty challenging, getting to both in the same lineup. I'm sure you can do it on FanDuel easier than you can do it on DraftKings, but I imagine you could get there with all the value on the board on both. There's like a cat hair that's been dangling from the brim of this hat for like 2 days, and every now and then the light catches right, and it just goes right in front of my eyes like that, and it totally distracts me. But I haven't been able to I keep on going like this. I keep on I've ran one of those sticky things over the brim of the hat a few times. To no avail. Just keeps on getting right in my face. Driving me nuts. Nope. Blue Jays bats going up against Josiah Gray. He's wrangled his home run problems a little bit. Only a 3.03% home run rate on the season. That's only as compares to the 6.1 from 2 years ago, the 5.86 from last year. 3.85 ERA, a 5.11 xFIP though. Not quite as good as what the ERA might lead people to think. 11.3% walks, not great. 19.9% strikeouts, not great. Going up against a pretty decent Blue Jays lineup in their home park here. I don't love the opportunity for Josiah Gray shares. Let me get the correct version of the Blue Jays lineup in. So while I wouldn't be floored by an okay start out of Josiah Gray, I think we've got a lot of potential spots to go to for okay starts. 7,700, 8,200. He's a mixer at best. And that's on DK as an SP2 option mixer at best. Not really a premium option. Not really. I'll probably leave him into lineup building in the optimizer, but I don't know if he comes through at that price on the FanDuel slate in my pitching pool. When I do the sort, that's probably going to be fairly limiting. A lot of good projections on the Toronto side of things. George Springer back in the leadoff role, 4,800, 3,000. Very cheap for George Springer's talents. I know he hasn't been good this year overall, but he does have an above average 103 WRC plus. He's got 17 homers, 17 steals, 258, 325, 407. He's a struggling star, but he's doing a little bit better than like the Carlos Correa, former teammate in Houston, struggling star types. So I think there's a little bit more upside for Springer on any given slate. He's got an 11.15 in the home run model in this matchup. That's up a couple points from when he was hitting down here in the projected. So I kind of like the uptick for Springer. Brandon Belt has been arguably their best player in his 369 plate appearances, creating runs 34% better than average in a season where Vladdy's at 116, Springer's at 103. All these guys are, outside of the short sample guys, kind of mixed quality there. Springer's been a rock for this team, or Belt rather, has been a rock for this team. 15 home runs, a 218 ISO, gets on base at a 371 clip, drawing 16% walks. The only flaw is the nearly 35% strikeouts, but he's only priced at 3,700, 2,800. The true flaw is that he plays the same position as Vladdy on DK, like we talk about all the time. Vladdy himself, very, very cheap, 5,100, 3,100. For that bat, for that hitter, when he's making better contact than he did last year, the results are limited, 20 home runs, a 116 WRC plus, but he's still well above average. He's priced like this hitter now. So, yeah, he's slumping for him, but he's priced like a guy who's already delivered this on the season, and we know what the ceiling is. Vladdy Guerrero, big play on in Blue Jays stacks. Davis Schneider, 4,300, 2,800, 5 homers in 44 plate appearances. A 486 ISO that's probably unsustainable, have a feeling. Probably going to come down from being 186% better than average for run creation. But solid little premium contact, 16.7% barrels in the tiny sample. Obviously, 5 of them went for home runs. He's also delivered a 432, 523, 919 triple slash. It's an outrageous 44 plate appearances. We'll see what the next 100 or so look like. But he's in play. He's cheap, hitting cleanup at second base. Not a bad option. Whit Merrifield, down lineup. He maintains quality down here. Picks up a little bit in looking for a little bit more power than when he leads off down here. So maybe we get a little bit of pop out of him. He's got 11 home runs on the season, only a 121 ISO, but a very sturdy hit tool, some good on-base skills, good speed, good correlated scoring potential with guys later in the lineup. Dalton Varsho, Danny Jansen, Ernie Clement, and Kevin Kiermaier rounding out the lineup. Ernie Clement, $2,000 option on both sites. 179 plate appearances last year. This is what he did. 184, 243, 209 with a .025 ISO, 0 home runs, 0 stolen bases, and a 31 WRC plus. 133 plate appearances the year before. He did hit 3 home runs, but had a 72 WRC plus. So he's gotten some shots. It's not like we're getting a kid on his making his 11th plate appearance. But that said, for the dead minimum price, if you need the salary offset, if it gets you to, fills out a 3-man that includes like. Well, it's not an ideal spot in the lineup for that. Let's say you want to go like a Clement wrap around to Springer and Vladdy, kind of a weird 3-man on DK for 11.9, an average of just 3,900. It makes it maybe effective enough where you could grab a. Probably not. You probably still need some more value. I was going to say Gaussman and Breas, but probably not. That's probably not cheap enough. You'd probably have to go to. Maybe if you went like Springer and Belt, buys you a couple thousand. Oh, come on, mouse. But my point is it just helps you flex around and build a little bit. Shortstop and second base on FanDuel, a little bit more valuable than shortstop and than second base and third base on DK. Kiermaier, mix and match option, does have a 103 WRC plus over 318 plate appearances. Not overly valuable, but hasn't been completely inept on offense this year. Kevin Gaussman, strong option up top. Blue Jays bats, very limited contrarian darts of either Josiah Gray or Nationals. Zero priority for either of those plays for me. Astros and the Bo Sox. Astros look like they have most of their everyday lineup intact. Isaiah Abreu climbing the lineup oddly. We'll discover why that is when I get a better look at it in half a second. So I do think in seasons past, both of these pitchers would have been firmly on the board. They've both been very successful at this level. Christian Javier was a low 30s strikeout pitcher each of the last 2 seasons, 25 starts last year, 148 2/3, had a 33.2% strikeout rate, a 3.53 xFIP under a 2.54 ERA. This year he's just completely fallen apart. 21.3% strikeouts, 5.35 xFIP under a 4.52 ERA, giving up a lot of premium contact. Facing a pretty deadly Red Sox lineup with a ton of good lefty bats in it in Fenway Park. Just doesn't seem like the right spot, and he's not priced at a discount. 8,500. There's a couple bucks off on the DK price. 9,100 on FanDuel, maybe a couple bucks off, but not really a premium discount for this pitcher in this form against this team in this park. So I have really no interest in Christian Javier at those prices. If he was like 1,000 less, maybe I'd be calling him a mix-in dart, talking about his pedigree from the last few seasons. If you catch that guy on that night, blah, blah, blah. Just doesn't seem like it today. Chris Sale on the other side. 29.4% strikeouts is very good. 33.9% hard hits is very good. Only 7.9% barrels. 3.27% home runs. A little bit of wonky home run total output, but not bad for premium contact in the short sample of 73 innings, 14 starts this year. 3.63 xFIP under the clunky ERA. Obviously, the swinging strikes, the CSW, the strikeout rate are all there. I just don't love it. The Astros are the third best team in baseball by WRC plus against left-handed pitching this year. They sit, they have a, where the hell is it? I know I put it in here. There it is. 128 WRC plus collectively against lefties for the active roster. 200 ISO collectively against lefties. And they have a 17.8% strikeout rate in the split. That said, Chris Sale just faced this team and he struck out nine of them in 5 innings. He also allowed 4 runs on 6 hits, including a home run. Kind of a mixed bag of quality. 5 innings, I expect we're getting similar kind of upside in terms of the innings. I don't think we're getting like a 7 inning, regardless of how well how he's pitching, kind of a start out of Chris Sale. I just think that guy, that depth of start is not really available to him right now. Let's see what he's what's his deepest start recently. Five innings, 4 1/3, 4 2/3, 3 2/3, going back to 5 innings, 4 1/3, 4 2/3, going back to the August 11th return. Before that, 3 2/3, 5 innings in the 2 starts before he went out with injury. Had gone 7 innings and 8 innings leading into those that probably directly led to that absence. So I don't know. 3 starts of around a 5 innings cap, 16 hitters, 19 hitters, 22 hitters, giving up runs. There is a little bit of a strikeout ceiling, but to put that same kind of expectation on him against this really low strikeout Astros team, I kind of question it. We've got both Alvarez and Tucker in the lineup. They're both very low strikeout guys. They're lefties, but they don't suffer lefty-lefty matchups. Maybe against a lefty of this premium quality, as we always say, there are lefties. Chris Sale is on the high end of that when he's going right. But these are 2 premium same-handed hitters. So I'm not really worried about either one of those guys. 21 home runs on the season for Alvarez and only 362 plate appearances. That's the same total that Alex Bregman has in 586 chances. Bregman played every day basically this season, 261, 362, 442. He's been fine. 180 ISO, I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but 25% better than average for run creation. Jose Altuve at the top of the lineup, absolute superstar in his position. You're paying superstar prices, so he better be. But 314, 409, 500, there's no arguing with it. 54% better than average creating runs. 9 homers, 13 steals, and only 276 plate appearances. Absolute stud at the top of the lineup. Jose Abreu climbing to 5th in the lineup, 3,800, 2,500. We all know he's had a rough season. It's been a year. It's been a full year. A little bit more than a full year. He did hit 10 home runs this year, 477 plate appearances. Pulled himself up to a 74 WRC plus after the atrociously bad start. But it's been more than a year since he's been effectively good or reliable at the plate at this point. 3,800, 2,500. It's concerning. At least is affordable. 4,800, 3,400 for Chas McCormick. I'd rather just go to McCormick, even though he's the 3rd outfielder in a stack, which isn't ideal. I think it's just a better option to go Alvarez, Tucker, McCormick here. He's had a star-making kind of a season, 283, 366, 521, a 238 ISO, a 144 WRC plus, 19 homers, 14 steals. It's just tons of power here. A lot of only Alvarez above the magic number, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other guys in this lineup at above like the mid-7 range when we're shooting for 10 or better. I mean, that's pretty good here. Jainer Diaz, 19 home runs with a 253 ISO and only 313 plate appearances. 12.6% barrels, 43.7% hard hits. Catcher or first base eligible, probably a better first base option than Abreu on the DK slate. Jeremy Pena's been lousy this season, 41.27. He's a mix-in option at shortstop. Martin Maldonado, mix-in option at catcher. Definitely prefer Jainer Diaz at catcher, but probably going to be a lot higher owned than Maldonado. On the Red Sox side, going up against Javier, definitely some bats I want to get to here. Sox were carrying a 5.34 run total earlier in the day, probably hovering around the same level. Major opportunity for their bats. A lot of cheap pricing, too. Only Rafi Devers above 5,000 on the DK slate. That's a mistake. Devers at 3,800 as the only player above 3,500 on the FanDuel slate. That's a mistake. Alex Verdugo, 45.33, has 12 home runs, 278, 342, 446, 10% better than average grading runs. We know that he's better than even that pretty decent output. 342 on base, ahead of bats like Rafi Devers, Justin Turner, Masataka Yoshida, Adam Duvall, Tristan Casas. This is the most valuable thing that Verdugo is going to do, is just set the table. Get on base, set the table for these guys. He's had a bit of an up and down season, but as the table setter for those prices, that's a great buy. Rafi Devers, tremendous power at the plate, 12.8% barrels, 52.3% hard hits, 29 homers, 127 WRC plus, 244 ISO. Not even really struggling in terms of the triple slash at this point. 272, 347, 516 is starting to look more like 295, 358, 521 from last year. WRC plus is within 13 points of last year's. Still effectively cheap for his talent. A couple $100 off anyway. Maybe not as cheap as he was fairly recently, but still cheap. And especially when you get Turner at first base, 4,900. It sucks that you got to decide between him and Casas. Let's just give him second base eligibility, DraftKings. Do the right thing. They had him at second base for about a week there, and then they took it away again. But that would be dynamite if he could slot in at second for us. But the conflict, the positional conflict sucks, but both of these guys are very playable. Tristan Casas, major left-handed pop from in 432 plate appearances, 14% barrel rate to lead the team, 45.8% hard hits, 21 homers, a 226 ISO. Turner, 22 homers, a 206 ISO, 130 WRC plus, excellent triple slash. He can act as a table setter. He can clear the bases. He can act as a table setter ahead of Yoshida, who can do the same thing. He either resets the table for Duvall and Casas, or he's got the ability to clear to these guys. Just a really dynamic lineup that's really good at creating opportunities for one another. A lot of good on-base skills through here. A lot of power. Adam Duvall, 4,800, 3,000, has 16 home runs in 262 plate appearances, a monster 301 ISO, 12.8% barrels. Everybody's sleeping on how good a power hitter Adam Duvall is in the middle of that lineup. Trevor Story hiding in the 7th spot. Shortstop only on DK. Second base and shortstop still only 3,000 on FanDuel. 1 home run, 53 WRC plus in his 67 limited plate appearances since he's come back. But this is all I want to focus on. 12.8% barrels, 46.2% hard hits from a guy who is a star caliber infielder. I love that he's making that kind of contact. I'm happy to go to that option. I hope the public doesn't, and I'll just take the advantage. Connor Wong, good bat on ball skills as a catcher, 8 home runs in 329 plate appearances. We've got some catcher options to work with on this slate, but he's at least in the mix when stacking Red Sox. So is Luis Urias. Second base, 2,400, 3 positions for 2,300 on FanDuel. Good source of power over the last couple years. 16 homers last year, 23 2 years ago. Red Sox up and down, Astros up and down. Like both lineups, top to bottom, basically. You can throw mid-range darts at both of these pitchers. I prefer Chris Sale to Christian Javier. If you're doing that, I would rank the pitchers Sale then Javier, even with the pricing and the likely popularity included. But I think it's fairly limited on both of these guys. I don't really want that much exposure to either of these guys, given where they're priced relative to the rest of the slate. All right. Arcathelza says, is Grayson Rodriguez a trap? Could be. Could be a little bit trappy in that spot if he's gaining a ton of popularity. I believe in the talent wholeheartedly, and I don't think there's much of a threat in this lineup. It's really this guy and whoever decides to show up for work that day. So I think he's got plenty of appeal, plenty of upside. He projects well. If he gets crazy popular at the 7,500, I assume you're referring to DK there. I don't think he's all that trappy at 87 on the FanDuel slate. I think that's just a good price on a good pitcher. Even if he gets a little popular, I'm okay with it. But that value price on DK, I imagine, is making him aggressively popular. So that could get arguably a little trappy. But I think he's got the home run or the strikeout upside. I think he's got the potential. As long as he can limit home run power, I think you're cruising to a pretty decent score, which is probably what makes it trappy. Texas. Let's grab the lineups. I like John Gray here going up against the limited Mets. I do not like Tyler McGill going up against the Rangers. I think the Rangers are a definite source of offense on this slate. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager. Looks like basically the top end of the Rangers lineup is intact anyway. Joker's enthusiastic about it. Go lie down, pal. Got a long way to go. Good boy. Go lie down. Find something to do. Go build a puzzle or something. It's not that smart. So let's start with John Gray. 8,100, 9,400. The FanDuel price is aggressively high. I'm hoping it's one of those pay up to be different situations. He obviously projects very well against this. Did I put these lineups? Put them. Give me a second. I put the Rangers lineup in the Mets spot. Not that impacts that projection. That's not the way that the pitching projection works there. But wanted to be able to talk about the Mets lineup, not the Rangers lineup. So Gray projects out very, very well against the Mets lineup that is really limited to these top four hitters, and really only three of those top four hitters, because Jeff McNeil is a limited, put the ball in play, slap hitter kind of a guy with a 266, 335, 353, triple slash, and a 96 WRC plus. So he's, just a mixer. Everybody else in the lineup, limited lefty power bat, limited lefty power bat, limited lefty backup catcher, limited righty power bat, who only really has done it in the minor leagues, limited overall bat. It's Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, and Pete Alonso that worry me about John Gray's opportunity here. It's those three guys, and really only those three guys. If you get burnt by Vogelback or Stewart or somebody like that with a homer, so be it. That's the baseball gods getting you. But true opportunity-wise, it's a three-hitter lineup here. So there's upside for days for John Gray in this spot. 3.76 ERA, a 4.39 xFIP, 20.6% strikeouts. It's around a John Gray kind of a season. Limits barrels, limits power. Last couple of years, he's definitely dipped in strikeouts, 25.7%, 24.4% the last couple of seasons, with reasonably similar ERA and xFIP marks. The power allowed, 3.26% home runs on 6.1% barrels last year, 3.26 on 6.9% the year before. He's improved to 2.60 this year on 5.3% barrels. Just good at limiting premium contact, capable of finding a strikeout ceiling on the right night. So I think there's potential here for John Gray to succeed. It's not exactly a high strikeout Mets lineup, but there's a few options in here. Mark Vantos is certainly targetable. DJ Stewart is targetable. Dan Vogelback is targetable. To a degree, even Alonso. There's plenty of swing and miss there. Obviously a super dangerous hitter who the Mets are apparently putting on the trade market in the offseason. Going to be a nice acquisition for somebody. I kind of like the spot for John Gray. 8,100 on the DK slate, a reasonable pivot for a few bucks more from that Grayson Rodriguez value. So I think he's on the SP2 ward on DK. Not exactly a discounted SP2, but a fairly priced one. 94 on FanDuel. Like I said, I just hope it keeps the ownership a little bit low, because I think I'm going to get some. If you're building Met stacks, Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, those are your priorities. 45.29 for Nimmo off the top of the lineup, 355 on base, 120 WRC plus, and 18 homers. Similar to Verdugo, just very, very good leadoff hitters, good correlated scoring ability, decent home run power. Nimmo's got a little bit more pop than Verdugo in the bat. More home runs this year, better premium contact profile. He's a better individual, better one-off play, but similar levels of correlated scoring with Francisco Lindor, who's got 24 homers, 23 steals, a 216 ISO, 123 WRC plus. He's second best on the team behind Alonso's 131. Alonso leads the team with 39 homers, 15.4% barrels, 42.1% hard hits. McNeil works as a correlated scoring play for cheap pricing, second base and outfield. And then these guys are all just mix and match. Not much appeal in Vogelback at this point. 229, 333, 402. He does have a 107 WRC plus, but only a 173 ISO. 12 homers and 288 plate appearances is pretty decent output total, but it's just irregular in terms of the triple slash. I don't love the Dan Vogelback option. He's appropriately priced for what he's doing. I mean, 3,000, 2,300. You certainly mix him in if you're building a lot of Met stacks. I just prefer the John Gray side of the equation. DJ Stewart, similar to Vogelback, just looking for some odd lefty home run power. Omar Narvaez, kind of similar thing. Lower end than Francisco Alvarez over the course of the entire season. At this point, they're probably same. kind of level. The kid is cooled pretty dramatically. Vientos does have power from his AAA profile, only 2 home runs in the show, below the Mendoza line in 130 plate appearances. If you're going to the Rangers side, I think you can definitely target some Tyler McGill here. 5.54 ERA, a 5.16 xFIP, 17.5% strikeouts, and all of this premium contact available. Going up against this ridiculous Rangers team, I like this a lot. The Rangers have a 4.55 run implied total, so it's not one of these teams that's blasting through the 5 level. I'm hoping that slides them a little bit under the radar. It looked like Seager was picking up his appropriate ownership. Semmy was getting a little when I checked ownership on RG's projections early in the day, but a lot of the other guys in this lineup just slipping into the single digits. So I'm not really concerned about popularity, and I love the spot. You can see 3 guys in the home run model above the magic number, 2 more guys like right at it, 3 more guys like right at it. There's a lot of pop in this Rangers lineup, a lot of opportunity to sequence, create runs. Texas ranked 4th overall on the projections board, 2nd for power, 8th by FanDuel points per dollar, 12th by DK points per dollar. They've gotten a little bit more expensive on the DK slate, or really it's more Semion's back up by a couple $100 where FanDuel discounted him even further to $3,500, which is a great buy on FanDuel. And then like Adolis Garcia, Corey Seager are both very, very expensive on DK, where they're a little bit more in reach on FanDuel. Bottom of the lineup is still affordable, still pretty cheap. But the bottom of this version of the lineup, which isn't the one that board was done with, because it includes Robbie Grossman in here. So that had Jankowski, and it had Garver in it. So we do take a little bit of a dip for the home run mark. Not by a ton, but Garver in this spot was definitely drawing better than a 6.08. Grossman got a little bit of pop in the bat, 337 plate appearances, a 158 ISO, 8 home runs, and 95 WRC+. JP Martinez here, 2,800, 2,200. Home run in the books in 36 plate appearances. I don't think there was a ton to really chase when we looked him up previously. Pull him up again real quick. No, it does have the mid-range power and speed combo. That's right. 33 stolen bases in AAA in 308 plate appearances with 12 homers to go with it. 253 ISO in AAA this year. So that's a pretty decent run creator. Maybe you're just grabbing cheap shares in the outfield, hoping for the home run. If he gets on, he might steal you a bag. Jonah Heim, tremendous power at catcher. Ezekiel Duran, very good season, 3,900, 2,700. Triple position Ezekiel Duran for 2,700 on FanDuel is a very strong buy in stacks of Rangers. A 118 WRC plus, 14 homers, 8 steals. Leody Taveras has cooled, 95 WRC plus now, but still decent for counting stats, decent as a 9 hitter. Still one of the better 9 hitters in the game. Marcus Semien up at the top, like I just referred to, 3,500 on FanDuel at second base. He's way too cheap. 20 homers, 13 steals, 121 WRC plus, correlates directly with Seager, Lowe, and Adolis Garcia. Just grab your shares of Semien. He's got an 11.11 in the home run model. Looks like a great option. Seager second on the entire slate at 16.26 in the home run model, 24 on the season, a 304 ISO. Adolis Garcia, the home run pick of the day, 15.4 in the home run model. Was looking at single-digit ownership earlier in the day. I love picking those single-digit guys with massive home run marks. That was 3rd overall on the day for home run potential. He's got 32 in the books this season, 250 ISO. Love the spot for Adolis Garcia. So that's Rangers up and down. John Gray. Mets more as like a hedge position from the lower middle portion of the board. And 0 Tyler McGill. Guardians and the Twins. Like the spot for Kenta Maeda quite a bit. Guardians very, very limited in terms of their run creation ability. Very limited in terms of their power at the plate. All they do is avoid strikeouts, but Maeda's got the talent to find the strikeouts that he needs to pay off his pricing on this one. Overall, Maeda, 8,900 on FanDuel, 92 on DK, 28.9% strikeout rate with a 13.2% swinging, only a 6.6% walk rate, 4.22 ERA with a 3.85 xFIP, giving up a little bit of premium contact this year, 9.8% barrels, 42.3% hard hits on a fly ball trajectory, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo. We know that leads to some home run mistakes. 3.95% home runs is a little higher than we want, but it's a non-threatening Guardians lineup. 10.14 in the home run model for Jose Ramirez because he's Jose Ramirez. 21 homers, 21 steals, a 125 WRC plus, a 209 ISO, 7.5% barrels, 40.4% hard hits. If you can get me through Jose Ramirez twice, 3 times, I think we're in business here. Ramirez is very cheap, by the way. If you want to go to Guardians, 3,300 is a misprice on FanDuel. That's very, very cheap. I know it's not the outrageously good version of Ramirez, but this is pretty damn good statistical output alone for that price at third base. It's just that he's got no support in the lineup. But if you wanted to grab him as a cheap one-off, even on DK at 55, I think he's usable as a one-off. It's just a different play. You're paying, mostly full freight over there. But no real support in the lineup. Cole Calhoun at first base, 3,500. Outfield on FanDuel, 2,500. 288, 356, 439. His created runs well, hit 2 home runs, a moderate amount of power in his 73 plate appearances, but a limited option. Lefty, formerly very good at hitting righties for power. Steven Kwan doesn't get on base enough, doesn't create runs well enough, doesn't do anything else at the plate. Very limited option for DFS. Ramon Laureano, miscast as a cleanup hitter. 8 home runs, 9 steals on the season. He's better as up here or down here in a lineup. Cleanup, Ramon Laureano is very weird. Andres Jimenez, toolsy player, limited output. 12 homers, 21 steals, 93 WRC plus, only a 147 ISO. Doesn't get himself on base nearly enough. 18.8% strikeouts is very good, but he needs to walk more or square the ball up a little bit more. He's doing basically neither this season. Will Brennan limited. Gabriel Arias, definite power option. 8 home runs on the season, a 136 WRC plus, 202, 283, 338. Not great there. 43.3% hard hits, a track record for power in the minors, and he costs the dead minimum on DK at first base or shortstop, 2,100 with triple position eligibility on FanDuel. That's a decent value buy if you're going to Guardians, but he's really, really limited overall, and I really don't see all that much appeal in going to Guardians today. Cleveland as a stack, ranked 21st by fantasy points, 17th by home run upside, even with Maeda struggling a little bit with the homers this year. 14th by FanDuel points per dollar. They do climb to 8th by DK points per dollar, just on virtue of being so cheap. But I think it's less appealing than some of the other value options on this slate, despite being an okay ranked points per dollar. So very limited appeal there. Twin stacks against Xavier and Curry. It's an interesting spot. 5,700, 6,000. I don't think Curry's necessarily off that value darts board. We're not talking about a very high-end pitcher by any means. Projects in the lower middle portion of the board. 16.6% strikeouts this year with a 3.58 ERA, but a much uglier 5.28 xFIP. He's allowing 8.6% barrels, 45.9% hard hits, pushing almost 92 miles an hour of exit velo on 21.4 degrees of average launch. So that's a lot of premium contact to be giving up on a aggressively high fly ball trajectory. That leads to a lot of home runs for guys. I think he's been very lucky to just give up 2.51% home runs. I think that leads me to some twin stacks on the other side of this equation. But I do think for 5,700, 6,000, given all the strikeouts that we know are in this Twins lineup, even with a limited option like Curry, a few value darts, not out of the question, particularly for 57 at SP2 on DK. Not totally out of the question. The innings are capped. He's probably not going more than 5. Let's see what he's done in the last couple. Only 2 the last time out. Faced 11 hitters because he gave up 3 runs, only struck out 1. Game before that went 6 against Detroit, struck out 6, allowed an earned run, no home runs. I think that's like our upside performance here. A 6 strikeout, 2 walk, 5 hit game, gives up a run, makes it through 6 innings. Maybe he only goes 5. I think that's our upside performance. But I think for 57, that's probably about right. I don't mind that there. I think you could throw some darts at it. Twin stacks, though, like I said, definitely going to be a priority hedge position to any Curry. And I think they're on the board a little bit more than that as a potential value option with a little bit of power potential. The Twins ranked 9th overall on the overall points board, 4th by FanDuel points per dollar, and 3rd by DK points per dollar. So this is a good power spot, or this is a good value spot. And I think there's a little bit more power than might be showing through the model, given that he's only allowed the 2.51% home runs. And he was pretty good, if I'm remembering correctly, last year at 2.13% home runs in a very limited sample. Last year, 2.7% barrels. So this tiny sample goes together with this relatively small sample and this number, and it keeps their home run marks a little lower than maybe they should be, given that we think that this is somewhat luck-based because of all this. So there's a little bit of a complex equation here around the Curry play and around the Twins play. I think these power numbers are maybe a little bit low, but either way, they're easily on the board given how they project just fantasy points wise for all the cheap pricing. Nobody above 4,500 on DK. Nobody above 3,000, which is the price for Royce Lewis on the FanDuel slate. Edward Julian, 3,600, 2,800. 11 home runs on the season, a 196 ISO, 139 WRC plus, strikes out 30.7% of the time. We'll give you the bad with the good. Lewis, 25.7% strikeouts. Over 148 plate appearances, though, 312, 358, 500, 7 home runs, 2 steals, 137 WRC plus. Pretty good prospect pedigree. Max Kepler, their best option for limiting strikeouts at 21.6%, 12.7% barrels, 46.5% hard hits, leads the team with 21 home runs, 237 ISO. Very nice little season from Max in his 375 plate appearances. A priority lefty bat in this lineup in stacks of Twins. Also a guy I think you could one-off, 3,600, 2,700. I don't mind that for a little bit of a sneaky home run one-off. Carlos Correa, Jorge Polanco, 2 veteran sources of pop in the middle of the lineup, 44 and 45 on DK. Shortstop, second base, third base. Shortstop, third base, second base on the FanDuel slate, both for 2,900. Limited output overall for both of them, 94 WRC plus for Correa in a very down season, 110 WRC plus for Polanco in a limited season because of injuries, 241 plate appearances. That said, both still have premium power, 9.6% barrels and 44.8% hard hits for Correa, 14% barrels, 41.4% hard hits for Polanco. Both of them have been very high-end sources of power from the middle infield throughout their careers. So I like both of these options. Ryan Jeffers, 3,400, 2,900. Premium contact, 11.6% barrels, 44.5% hard hits. A very good triple slash at 281, 383, 484. A 203 ISO, 10 home runs and only 257 plate appearances. 29.2% strikeouts, problematic. 32.2% strikeouts from Matt Wallner. No Joey Gallo in the lineup, but you do get Donovan Solano and Michael A. down here. Michael A., our favorite, completely unowned 9-hitter. 19 home runs, 12 stolen bases, a 96 WRC plus, but a 222 ISO. Strikes out nearly 34% of the time, but puts bat on ball pretty well for a guy who costs 2,400, 2,900, has good results for it, and never gets ownership at the bottom of the lineup. Solano, 3,100. On DK at first base, kind of limited by virtue of not really hitting for any power and then hitting this far down the lineup. At 2,200 with triple position eligibility, he's a lot more interesting on FanDuel. He works a lot better as a correlated scoring play. You can wrap him back around to the top of the lineup from second base, third base, wherever you want him. I think Solano plays much better on the blue side for where he's priced. So Twins kind of like to stack up and down. I like their pitcher. Kenta Maeda. Twins bats. Xavier Curry, very limited shares, but some value darts are on the board. It is possible at 5,700, especially on the DK slate. Probably too limited for FanDuel play. Xavier Curry, I don't think gets you to the quality start. I don't think we've got enough ceiling on FanDuel. But for the SP2 value price on DK, I do think he's on the board. Very, very limited shares of Guardians. Jose Ramirez is the only priority bat in that Guardian stack. Padres. Padres are going to be popular. Padres are a major source of potential on this slate, going up against Adam Wainwright. The ghost of Adam Wainwright. I don't even like saying corpse. I think he's not even in corporeal form anymore. I think we're just dealing with something ethereal that resembles Adam Wainwright at this point. 77 and a third innings, 17 starts, and 11.6% strikeout rate. Would be hilarious if it wasn't so sad. 4.8% swinging strike rate. That there are probably people in chat who could induce a better than 4.8% swinging strike rate. 5.73 xFIP, an 8.61 ERA, 4.23% home runs on 11.6% barrels. Just fire away with Padres. Ha-Seong Kim is a great option off the top. 5,000, 3,200 multi-position on both sites. Doing a great job creating runs. 127 run creation mark with a 368 on base. 17 homers, 29 steals. Good individual output, but we play him even more for his correlated scoring ability with these 4 guys. I like Garrett Cooper climbing the lineup here for the Padres. I see him in there. We'll talk about him in a second, but I like these 4 guys into Garrett Cooper the most, and then Gary Sanchez down the bottom of the lineup here. Machado, 25 home runs to tie with Juan Soto for the team lead. Fernando Tatis sliding down the lineup to the cleanup spot today, despite a bit of a power outage, 197 ISO, still a 116 WRC plus, 20 homers, 23 steals. Probably looking to get him going for power a little bit by moving him down lineup a little bit here. So I really like the spot for him. I prefer Soto in the outfield, even for price, or with a price advantage on both sites, actually. 5,800, 3,300, 3,300. Let's talk about that for a second. This is probably 200 low if you're going to price Tatis at 6,000 on DK, but at least it's close. Juan Soto for 3,300 on FanDuel against Adam Wainwright. This version of Adam Wainwright is an absolute mistake. That might be the best value bet on this entire slate. 260, 400, 485 with a 225 ISO, creating runs 46% better than average. He's got a 56.6% hard hit rate, 12.6% barrels, strikes out less than 20%, walks almost 20%. Why is he 3,300? What are we doing? I had not noticed that earlier in the day. This is my favorite spot on the entire slate. You guys know I love Juan Soto in general, but just getting him for that money against this pitcher is killer. Great spot. Bogarts, 4,800, 2,800. He's too cheap on both sides, but again, particularly on FanDuel. I know it's been a lousy season. 15 homers and 13 steals is fine. A 105 WRC plus is okay. We expect a much better triple slash, but he's still Xander Bogaerts. It's declining. It had gone up to like 272, and it's come back down by 12 points. It hasn't been great, but I'm still going to go to the option. The hit tool's intact enough that he can put the ball in play a few times against this version of Wainwright at worst, and there's major ceiling on the player. Still only striking out 17.5% of the time. If nothing else, we could say we expect Xander Bogaerts to put bat on ball and put the ball in play a couple times today. And I expect more than that. 2,700, 2,400 for Garrett Cooper. 10.4% barrels, 41.5% hard hits, 14 homers on the season. You're going again against Adam Wainwright. Gary, bottom of the lineup, 18 home runs and 244 plate appearances, 15.7% barrels, leads the team, 44.7% hard hits is great, a 279 ISO. Give him exactly what we should have expected. I keep seeing these, I didn't expect this, what a surprise, Gary Sanchez, these takes around the industry. It's like, no, he's doing exactly what he's always done. This is Gary Sanchez. This is who he is. Put him in a lineup, he's going to hit you 25 home runs in a full season at least. He's going to strike out a ton. He's not going to give you any kind of batting average, very limited on base skills. But when he connects, the ball travels. Trent Grisham at the bottom of the lineup for 3,000, 2,500. Creating runs 7% worse than average. Okay source of counting stats. Limited player overall. And then we get to the corpse of Matt Carpenter, 2,400, 2,100. Matt Carpenter is a zombie against Adam Wainwright as a ghost. Which one succeeds? I have to lean toward the Carpenter side, but he's been really bad. 170, 301, 304, a 135 ISO, 76 WRC plus, 4 home runs and 210 plate appearances. He probably should have been satisfied with the weird season last year. 154, 15 home runs, hit all those crazy sneaky home runs for the Yankees in that weird stretch. But yeah, he was out of baseball for several seasons before that, kind of for good reason. So very limited option. 24-21. You can throw a few darts at it, but how many times am I going to him at first base over Garrett Cooper? Probably limited. I prefer Cooper. Cue the Matt Carpenter 3 home run game just to shut me up. Cards on the other side going up against Blake Snell. 10-8, 10-2. He projects pretty well. He does come with the asterisk of the same thing as always, the warning sign about a potentially inefficient game, given 13.5% walks, a 1.27 whip, but he knows how to pitch through that. That's what he's always been. He shows no signs of changing. He's got a 31% strikeout rate, a 15% swinging strike rate, limits power effectively, 33.3% hard hits, 2.53% home runs, a 2.73 ERA with a 3.61 xFIP. He's very, very good. On the off days where you get 5 or 6 walks, it becomes a little complicated. He can get into a short start situation. The Cards do have a lot of premium right-handed power. The Cards do have a lot of good hitters, man for man. As you go down the lineup, there's a lot of talent here, but their output, their results overall have been somewhat scarce. They haven't really created runs as a group all that well. It just seems like the odd couple cards go off and everybody else fails. So very limited appeal for the Cardinal stack, if nothing else. And I think I'm going to go to some Blake Snell shares. I hope that the matchup and the pricing keeps him a little bit less owned than he should be, because he does project out as one of the higher end options. I think he was 5th overall on the board. But there are other guys that rank out above him in better matchups. All of them come with degrees of warnings around, like the young kids have some pitch limitations potentially. So Snell at worst is equal to those guys as far as the quality of the option. Cardinals bats. Tommy Edman, good leadoff option, 4,500, 2,800, triple position eligible on FanDuel, 11 homers, 17 steals, only a 93 WRC plus, but provides a direct line into the righty power of Tyler O'Neill, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras. I like that little four-man unit right here. They're obvious names when you're going to this team, but O'Neill is still very cheap for his righty pop. 7 home runs, a 172 ISO isn't great, but makes very good premium contact. For that price, I'm happy to go to O'Neill. Goldschmidt, Arenado, the corner infield stars are obvious plays, but well worth getting to. 126 WRC plus for Goldschmidt, 121 for Arenado, 21 homers, 26 homers. Plenty of power still left in those bats. Wilson Contreras, 4,000, 2,700, affordable at catcher for a guy with 13 homers, a 115 WRC plus. Positionally, that's a very strong play. Very good contact profile. Very cheap price, particularly where you need catchers. Not a great matchup by any means, going up against Blake Snell. Not a good spot, not one to go out of your way for, but if you are stacking Cardinals, I think Contreras becomes a bit of a priority in that stack. Nolan Gorman, lefty-lefty, 4,200, 3,100, 24 home runs on the season. I know we looked him up at one point to get his lefty-lefty. Let's see what he looks like these days, because he's facing Blake Snell today. It's a little bit of a tough lefty for the kid to face. He has 3 of his home runs, a 281, 373, 509 triple slash with a 228 ISO against lefties and a 141 WRC plus. So in his 67 same-handed plate appearances, he's been quite successful compared to his 346 opposite-hand plate appearances, where he's at 229, 315, 474 in the triple slash, but still a 245 ISO most of his home runs. 21 of the home runs against righties, 3 of them against lefties in a much more limited sample. My suspicion is that most of those numbers come down in a longer sample for Nolan Gorman lefty-lefty. The triple slash probably cools, the power probably cools a little bit, but at least it's shown a little bit of effectiveness. For the 4,200, 3,100, I think if you're going to Cardinal stacks, you can definitely take your shares of Nolan Gorman. Maybe a little bit less than you normally would, but I think your exposure overall to Cards is probably a little less than it normally would be. One of our favorite guys, backup catcher Andrew Neisner, making his way into the lineup. 10 home runs, 220 ISO, 10% barrels, 41.5% hard hits. Every time we talk about him, he goes deep. 6.29 on this one. I don't know if we're getting that today. I like the option. I will include him if I go to Cards. Even on the FanDuel slate at 2,400, I just play him as always a second first baseman in the lineup, or a second, util, whatever we want to call catchers over there. I like him just as much as Contreras on the FanDuel slate. A little bit less than Contreras on the DK slate, even for the 1,000 more. I just want to go for the more reliable catcher who's more directly correlated, because catcher's a little bit more important there. But I do think you have a little bit of home run potential here. The 220 ISO is great. The contact has been great. So a little bit of upside there. Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn, mix in options late in the lineup. Walker does have a 46.1% hard hit rate, 11 home runs, only a 103 WRC plus, 156 ISO. Mason Wynn been kind of limited, but a high-end hit tool prospect. So that would be Padres bats. Blake Snell, Cardinals bats further down the board. No low for Adam Wainwright. Padres are a pretty high priority, but they'll probably be pretty popular. They were the 3rd ranked team by fantasy points, 2nd on the FanDuel points per dollar, 5th on the DK points per dollar. So that's a very high-end lineup. Brewers and the Cubs. Grab the lineups. Hit the like button for me. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already done that. Subscribe lets you know when the shows get scheduled. There's a little bit of variability in the show time, so make sure you're doing that so you can catch it from the top. You don't have to rewind and listen to me talk even faster than I already try to do. And hitting the like button helps us get noticed. Helps other people find out about our great little club here. Rotoscouts is the website. At Rotoscouts is the Twitter handle. Greg B. and Cone, I have Woo plus Padres, O's, and a Semien one-off. I like that a lot, buddy. Greg B. and Cone, it's like you funneled into a Braves plus Woo lineup on FanDuel. That's interesting. I don't hate that. That reminds me I do have to build my placeholder. Woo would be my placeholder pitcher, as somebody accurately predicted in the chat early today. Let me drop these placeholder lineups in while I'm talking about that. I'll catch up on chat. Frederick Doot says, as a Mays fan, woo! The brain's starting to go, gang. 527. The words are starting to slip as I doing too many things. Frederick said, as a Mets fan who's seen McGill enough, Terry's right in stacking Texas as one of the best sneaky stacks of the night. I appreciate the endorsement there, buddy. As a Mets fan, I also hope Terry and I are wrong. I like that. As a Mets fan, Frederick, what do you think of the idea that they might trade Pete Alonso this offseason? That was came out pretty widely reported yesterday that he was going to be on the block. I don't think it makes much sense, personally. I'm interested to hear your take on it. But I don't think it's not like they need to go through a full rebuild. I think they can retool on the fly around the core they've already got, the young kids that are coming up, and kind of just hit the ground running without a full rebuild. So trading Alonso is weird. He's also, what's his contract? This is not something we need to do on but now I've got myself wondering. It's only 4 years of service time. It's an arbitration play this year. He's on a 14.5, so maybe that goes up a little bit on the back of this year to like the 20 range. That's still probably a bargain. You pick him up in a trade, you sign him to a 10-year extension. Well, not 10 years. 8 years. He's 28, almost 29. He'd probably get 7 or 8 on the open market. So you sign him to a 7-year extension. I love it as a trade piece for somebody to pick up. But I don't see that. I don't see why the Mets want to get rid of him. I'm sure they don't want to get rid of him. It's an asset they can cash. But I don't know. Seems reactionary to me. I hope they don't do that. As a Mets supporter, not a Met-hating Yankee fan by any means, I really hope they don't do that. They tried to trade it. Yeah, Milwaukee was hot after Alonso, as Larry C says in the chat there. That is most definitely true. Milwaukee was really aggressively apparently pursuing him, and the Mets almost did it. They just couldn't get a line on the return, and then the Brewers went and, basically the same guy getting Carlos Santana instead of Pete Alonso, right? Basically the same pivot. But yeah, they couldn't get that one done. Eric B says, because money doesn't matter to Cohen. I know money doesn't matter to Cohen. That's an argument for keeping him. Re-signing him wouldn't, it's a drop in the bucket for Cohen. So you give him, however many hundreds of millions of dollars for his 7-year extension, 8-year extension. That would be, to me, that's an argument for keeping him. Power like that does not come along every day. Lone Wolf says, as a Braves fan, I hope they do trade him. Lone Wolf, regardless of what the Mets do, you need to, you guys are fine. You don't need to worry about what anybody in that lineup does. You guys are basically sitting, if you remember the softball episode of The Simpsons when Mr. Burns had the team full of ringers with like Jose Canseco, Ozzie Smith, Wade Boggs, Ken Griffey Jr., Roger Clemens, all when they were still playing and all those names were relevant. Mr. Burns recruited them to play for the nuclear power plant team in a softball game. And he's, there's a scene the night before. He's, oh, Smithers, I can't possibly lose. Maybe, only if all my players suffered misfortunes tonight. Maybe one misfortune could happen, maybe even 2 misfortunes, possibly 3, but 9 misfortunes. I'd like to see that. And then it goes through in montage, and like Ozzie Smith falls down into an abyss between universes. Jose Canseco's like rescuing people from a house fire. Ken Griffey Jr. takes a hair tonic that makes his head grow like 10 sizes too large, and so on and so forth, down through, it turned out to be 8 misfortunes, and Darryl Strawberry still got to play in Homer's spot on the team. But then later in the episode, Mr. Burns pinch hits Homer for Darryl Strawberry. I'm doing what the smart managers call playing the percentages. He's a left-handed hitter. I'd rather get Homer up there. Darryl says, but I have 9 home runs today. Anyway, 531 Simpsons reference, exactly there. Trey says, Tara, been telling you the pitching for Atlanta is suspect. I'm worried. They've got a couple guys in the pipeline, but yeah, they do need to improve that staff as they go forward a little bit probably, or see some of those guys make some strides. But I think pitching at that level can be acquired when you've got a 1 through 9 lineup that plays as well as that one does, and most of those guys are signed through like 2028. Pretty damn good future for that Braves lineup. Cut those sideburns, Mattingly, says Beantown. Exactly. Mr. Burns, I don't know what you do. He has like this entire head shave. I don't know what you think sideburns are. And he's walking away and he goes, I still like him better than Steinbrenner. Cubbies, big time opportunity against Wade Miley here. I really like the spot for the Cubbies. It's a lineup we go to a lot. Tons and tons of run creation, good amount of power. They don't rank out as well on the DK slate for points per dollar because you've got Bellinger up to 6,300, couple mid-range to high prices on the top of the lineup. So their points per dollar took a little bit of a ding on the DK slate, less so on the FanDuel slate, but tons and tons of upside going up against Wade Miley here. Miley's not atrociously bad for allowing power, 31.5% hard hits, 7.4% barrels, but a 3.07% home run rate is targetable enough. He only strikes out 16.5 and is never really all that much better than that. 3.18 ERA, but a 4.84 xFIP. I think we could target him with some Cubbies bats here. If I'm going to the Cubs, Nico up top does what he does. He's still high priced for what he does with a 102 WRC plus, 34 steals, decent triple slash, but the 58 is a little hard to swallow, but I think it's okay enough that you go to it. He's obviously in a key spot in that lineup, so he's playable on DK, but he's part of why the points per dollar is a little screwy on the DK slate. 3,400, a little bit more usable second base shortstop on FanDuel. Dansby, 5,200, 3,100. Nice discount on both sides for his power upside. 19 home runs. He'll settle in around his usual 25. 108 WRC plus. The ISO's down a little bit. The stolen bases aren't really there yet, or aren't really there this season, but a killer spot in a good lineup hitting second. Ian Happ, 4,500, 3,000. Too cheap. 15 home runs, 11 steals. Excellent on base skills ahead of Cody Bellinger. 63, 38. Appropriately priced, I'd say, for the star output. 20 homers, 18 steals, a 143 WRC plus. Puts bat on ball exceedingly well with a 225 ISO, despite just a 5.9% barrels, 30% hard hits. Seiya Suzuki, 3,600, 2,800. 47% hard hits, 9.1% barrels. Should be a little bit better output than the 13 home runs, 174 ISO, but creating runs 13% better than average, decent triple slash. I'll take it for the cheap pricing. I think he's a very effective option there. Jean Gomes, 3,200, 2,600, decent amount of right-handed pop behind the plate. Heimer Candelario, both switch hitter, both sides of the plate, first base, third base on the DK slate is valuable. 4,700 over there, 3,000 on the FanDuel slate. Nice and cheap at third base, 19 homers at 222 ISO. Patrick Wisdom, I love the option at the bottom of the lineup against the weak lefty here. 3,400 for Wisdom. He's got a 20% barrel rate, 54.8% hard hits, 20 home runs, and a 294 ISO in his 267 plate appearances. It's another one of those guys. We just don't worry about the triple slash. I don't care that he's exactly at the Mendoza line at a 200 batting average, only a 289 on base percentage. I'm just looking for the two home run upside that Patrick Wisdom gives me here. Nick Madrigal, 2,500, 2,300, a little bit of a mixer at the bottom of the lineup. I do think the Brewers are in play, coming back on the other side against Jamison Tyone. Tyone sitting at a 20.2% strikeout rate, a little bit more effective than Brewers. A little bit more effective than Wade Miley. 5.60 ERA, but a 4.70 xFIP on the season. 1.35 WHIP, only walking 6.7%, so there's a little bit of BABIP in play against him. 3.83% home run rate on 10.3% barrels. It leads me more to the Brewers side of things than it does to the Jamison Tyone share. If you want to throw a couple darts at the SP2 play for 69 on the DK slate, I think it's okay. I don't think it's good, but I think it's okay. I think it's non-tragic. I don't think you're completely shooting yourself in your foot. You're shooting at your foot, and you're just missing it off to the side. Maybe you're catching a piece of your sneaker, but your foot's okay. It's close. Not a lot to love there, but I think the price is okay. On FanDuel, I wouldn't do it for $8,000. It's just too expensive for too low-end an option. I will go to Brewers bats on both sides. Christian Yelich, 5,237 star caliber output, a 121 WRC plus, 16 homers, 27 steals, a 50.4% hard hit rate. William Contreras, one of the better catcher options on the entire slate, gains ground by virtue of hitting second, just like Adley does in the leadoff spot. Contreras, 4,900, 2,900, very, very good triple slash at 278, 355, 459, a 121 WRC plus, 14 homers, a very good hard hit rate and barrel rate. I like that option a lot. Strikes out less than 20% of the time. Sal Frelick climbing the lineup, 4,500, 3,100, 3 homers, 5 steals, a 115 WRC plus in his limited 107 plate appearances. 45-31 seems about right for what he is right now. Willy Adames, 42, 3,000. Very overall not great hitter, but he does have power. He's got 2 home run upside on any given slate. 12.2% barrels, 34.7% hard hits though. 21 home runs, 215, 298, 397, and 88 WRC plus. He's all over the map statistically. We know he's not that great, but he's cheap. 4,200, 3,000 for a guy who could easily hit 2 home runs here. Rowdy Tellez, 2,400, 2,600. Talk about a guy who can easily hit 2 home runs and comes very cheap. Rowdy from the left side is in a killer spot in this situation. 38.7% hard hits with 9% barrels, 300 plate appearances, 13 home runs on the season, only a 184 ISO, only a 217, 293, 401 triple slash. Last year he hit 35 home runs and 599 plate appearances. That's the guy I'm hunting for if I roster him here. Mark Canha, playable veteran part from the right side, better on FanDuel for 23, outfield and first base. Andrew Monasterio, better on FanDuel for 24, shortstop, second base, third base than he is for 3,000, third base only on DK. Kind of a limited option, 96 WRC plus, 3 homers, 7 steals. 2 ranked, 6 homers, 17 steals, a 69 WRC plus. Tyrone Taylor, 5 homers, 7 steals, a 69 WRC plus. Limited options for these 3 guys. Any one of them does have home run upside. Any one of them does have a little bit of stolen base and correlated scoring potential, though. They're very cheap down bottom. Overall, the Brewers ranked 13th by fantasy points, but 7th by home run upside, and 9th on both sites by points per dollar value. I suspect the home runs climbed slightly, given that whoever that was earlier came down a little bit. Was it the Rangers came down a little bit? And you gain ground because Tellez was hitting a little bit later in the lineup, so he gains a little bit. Not by a lot, but, negligible amounts, but a little bit. Enough to be noticed. So this would be... Where's Chicago? Chicago's 8th ranked by projections. Given the points per dollar of it and the home run upside, I'm going to put the Brewers bats slightly on top, actually, in an odd twist to the way that I presented all this information. Given that they're a little bit more points per dollar value and a little bit higher on the home run board, I'll put the Brewers on top, but the Cubbies are right there with them. It's bats on both sides. I don't really like either of the pitchers. If you wanted to throw a dart, it would probably be Jameson Taillon on DK, but very limited options. Handful of games to go. Coming up on 5:39. Looks like we're going to miss that 5:45 punch out, but maybe 6 o'clock's in play. Somewhere around there. Trey says, is it mirrored? Does it seem like Taillon is on every slate? He does seem to pitch quite a bit. These Pirates pitchers have been doing that to me lately, too. I feel like Oviedo pitched like 3 times in the past 4 days. 20.4% strikeout rate, a 4.46 ERA, a 4.78 xFIP, 9.8% walks, limited on the strikeouts. Okay for power for Oviedo. Going up against the Kansas City Royals. I do think there's a little bit of meat on the bone there if you want to try and grab it on the DK slate. Mostly on DK. I don't really think we need him on the FanDuel board. He's got enough potential that he could deliver on that 8,300 on FanDuel, but it's just a limited pitcher. You're just playing it because it's a very bad opponent. His individual upside, his individual potential, I think is a little bit limited in what he can do on the mound. So I don't love the play on the FanDuel board at 83. Minor shares of him on FanDuel, more shares at 73 on the DK slate for sure. 145 and a third, 26 starts. He's been okay. Effectively limits power, if nothing else. If you're taking that away from this Royals team, that's really all you need to do. There's not a lot of good run creators here. Their average on base percentage is 303 for this confirmed version of the lineup. Velasquez has a little bit of sneaky power, 19.6% barrels, 47.1% hard hits, and 8 home runs with a 366 ISO in his 75 plate appearances. That's at least somewhat interesting as the 5th hitter. Everybody below him in the lineup is just a mix-in part at best. Drew Waters, Matt Beattie, Matt Duffy, Kyle Isbell, very limited options down there. Mike Massey, maybe a little bit of sneaky lefty pop, 10 home runs and 371 plate appearances, but again, very limited, a 134 ISO, a 66 WRC plus. These are your 2 priority bats. Bobby Witt is by far their best player, 278, 318, 502, creating a run 17% better than average, 26 homers, 38 steals. Sal having a bad season, but he's your second biggest priority if you go to this team. 19 home runs and 486 plate appearances, but only a 169 ISO, only an 85 WRC plus. These 2 guys are your priority bats. Then probably MJ. We're just focused on the premium contact with MJ. Haven't gotten him going by talking about it. 12 home runs, a 157 ISO just doesn't make sense with this much premium contact for a lefty. He's very cheap. He's easy enough to get to on both sites. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of priorities. It just plays 1 through 5. If you're one-offing anybody from this team, it's probably an expensive Bobby Witt, maybe a cheap Sal Perez, but it's a really limited option. On the Pirates side of things, I do think there's potential for the Pirates. 6,000, 7,000 for Zach Greinke. He's just not on the board for me. If he beats me, he beats me. I don't really see it. 3.2% walks is the gem of what he's done. That's just what he's still very good at, is not getting himself into too much trouble. But a 5.34 ERA means he's allowing runs despite that. A 4.35 xFIP is better than that, but still not great. Only 16.4% strikeouts. Wainwright-ish, 7.5% swinging strike rate. Although that shows you how bad Waino has been. What was his, like 4.8? Yikes. When you can't out-swinging strike Zach Greinke, it's probably time to sit down. 4.83% home runs on the season, 8.4% barrels. I think we can target some Pirates bats here. They are one of the better value options on the board. Earlier in the day, 7th by FanDuel points per dollar, 2nd by DK points per dollar, 11th overall on the board to sit kind of in the middle. We get Leo Peguero in the lineup, who wasn't in the lineup earlier, so the power might actually take a little bit of a jump up. You do have weak options dragging down the power marks in these three guys. Ji-Hwan Bae, for as good as he is with the stolen base upside, only a 70 WRC plus, 2 home runs, 237, 309, 311. Not an ideal leadoff hitter here by any means. Brian Hayes. So you don't get no Brian Reynolds in the lineup. That's a big important factor for this Pirates team. I hadn't noticed that. So with the idea that Reynolds comes out, I am still interested in the Pirates stack. It deprioritizes them a little bit, though. That is their best player still. But I think it probably makes them even more sneaky. I doubt people are going to really consider them all that strongly with Reynolds out of the lineup. So while it does ding the potential for quality, it does ding their overall upside scores. It's kind of interesting if it limits the exposure a little bit more. I like Brian Hayes a lot. I like him hitting second, 49% hard hit rate, 10 home runs, 9 steals. The output hasn't been great, but the contact is excellent, and he doesn't cost that much. Andrew McCutchen at least gets on base, draws a ton of walks, 12 homers, 10 steals, could be better, but a 372 on base and creating runs 12% better than average. Kind of a key part to what they're going to be doing if they go off tonight. So I wouldn't skip McCutch too many times. Key veteran contributor there. Josh Palacios, 2,400, 2,200, 6 home runs in 188 plate appearances, but 211, 253, 377, kind of limited overall, making okay contact from the left side. Andy Rodriguez, high-end catcher prospect, 2 home runs in 108 plate appearances, 84 WRC plus, making okay contact, very cheap, 3,100, 2,400. Sawinski, their best power bat overall, 21 homers on the season at 231 ISO, limited in the triple slash, but I don't really care because we're looking for the home run power. Lefty bat, 17.7% barrels, 46.4% hard hits. Going up against the soft tosser in Greinke, I like the spot a lot for Jack Sawinski. 9.87 in the home run model. If he was hitting here, it would be above the magic number. Peguero for 2,800, 2,600, shortstop and second base on both sides. 5 home runs, 4 steals in just 104 plate appearances. I like that option for cheap pricing. Alfonso Rivas, Alika Williams, mix and match options late in the lineup. Pirates bats. And that's it. Pirates bats, minor Johan Oviedo darts, but it's not really for me. It's an SP2 play on DK, not on FanDuel really. So Pirates bats, DK SP2 value for Oviedo in small doses. Only minor hedge position of Royals bats, and no real love for Zach Greinke. Oh, good. It's the Coors Field game. You can pick up some time. As I said at the top of the show, the only real decision to make here is how much you want the Braves relative to the field, because they are a ridiculously good option. This lineup in Coors Field going up against this pitcher, goodbye Earth. It is going to be a massive outpouring of runs here in all likelihood. 12.5 run overall total, by far the Slate leader. What's that? 3 full runs higher than the next highest game, which was that Pirates and KC game, by the way. 7.59 implied run total, two full runs higher than the Orioles at 5.59. The Braves look ridiculous here. I just heard the Norm quote from Dirty Work after the prison scene, where things that happen in prisons happen to him, and he comes back on camera and he's just yelling off camera. That was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Tell you what hurt was the lack of respect. Actually, it was the other thing that hurt the most, but the lack of respect hurt second most. Ridiculous. That's how good the Braves look. Ridiculous. Norm Macdonald level ridiculous. 28 home runs, 30 home runs, 43 home runs, 29 home runs, 20 home runs, 15 home runs, 12 home runs. Only Kevin Pillar below average in this lineup for run creation this year at 71 WRC plus. Dragging down the whole operation, Kev. Still does have 6 home runs and only 151 plate appearances, though, a 181 ISO. Okay barrel rate for 3,500, 2,900. He's trying to get on track with the team theme. Pilar did hit 15 homers in 347 tries 2 years ago, 185 ISO, 90 WRC plus. Probably around this guy still. Mostly here for his defense, but he's a playable enough bat for the very cheap prices. Helps you offset the price of all of these guys that you want to get to. Holy shit, Ronald Acuna is a $7,000 option on DK today. I didn't see that. I had not noticed that. 7,000 for Ronnie Acuna. Matty Olson right behind him at 69. That is very difficult to get to on the DK board. 51 for Acuna on the FanDuel slate makes him very expensive. You do get Ozzy Albies as a nice discount on the FanDuel slate. 3,800 returning to the lineup. 28 home runs, 247 ISO. Yeah, disrespect to put Ozzy below 4,000 on the FanDuel slate. Probably disrespect to put him below 6,000 on the DK board, honestly. Austin Riley up to 30 home runs on the season, a 120 WRC plus, 6,300, 4,300. Figure out how to pay for him and then put him in your lineups because this is an outrageously good option. Ozuna, 51, Murph, 59, one of the top catcher plays on the entire slate with a 16.7% barrel rate and 20 home runs on the season and a 249 ISO. They're just great from top to bottom. Don't play Austin Gomber. He projects in the single digits. He costs less than most of their hitters for a reason. Bryce Elder, I just don't think it's priced appropriately. 8,384. Take 1,000 off that, and I'm kind of interested in Bryce Elder in this spot because the Rockies absolutely suck on the other side of this game. No real love for the Rockies. They are drawing a 5+ run total, or that looks like it cratered down to just under 5 now in a recent update, or at least per where Labs has them as I'm grabbing this lineup. We know they're a very bad team. They do get the same benefit of the ballpark, obviously, but all their stats include playing half their games in Coors Field. These guys just suck. Bryce Elder, pretty good at limiting power, a 2.37% home run rate on 6.3% barrels. Limited in terms of strikeouts, only 17.5% on the season. A 3.39 ERA is very good. 4.45 xFIP underneath the covers is probably a little bit more realistic. Last year was good at limiting power in a small sample, 54 innings and 9 starts. Pretty effective, pretty similar numbers to this year. A little bit more for strikeouts last year, but just kind of an is who he is type of a pitcher. So I just don't think the price is right. The projection is okay. It's borderline, but you're not getting enough of a discount to take the pitcher in Coors Field here. So just limited doses maybe of Rockies bats at very low ownership, but I don't expect him to get totally blown up here. You roll this 100 times, does he get blown up more than 10 times in that? Probably not. Charlie Blackmon, Ezekiel Tovar, Ryan McMahon. Top 3 options off the top of the lineup there. Tovar limited with 15 home runs, 8 steals, but only a 79 WRC plus. Doesn't get to first base nearly enough for that spot in the lineup. This team finally cut Jerickson Profar, by the way. If you missed that, I dropped it into the Discord. I was so excited to see it. Nothing against Profar as a person, but he didn't belong on a major league team. Certainly not a rebuilding lineup with a lot of interesting rookies. Blackmon and McMahon, couple of lefties. Nolan Jones also from the left side of the plate. Those would probably be my top 3 hitters if I had to 3-man off of this team. If somebody said you need to roster 3 Rockies and you can only have exactly 3, it would just be the 3 lefties down the line there. Blackmon, more of an on-base and correlated scoring option these days. Does have 7 home runs on the season. McMahon, 21 home runs, 205 ISO. And then Jones, 13 home runs, 223 ISO. Elias Diaz has been a effective catcher. So if you want to extend the DK slate, the DK stack out to 5, he would be my 4th man in. And then I might forgo Tovar and go down to Brendan Rodgers for 3,300 as opposed to the 45 for Tovar. Just put Brendan Rodgers at second base. You're getting the better overall player, and you're getting him at a cheaper price. 84 plate appearances. He hasn't hit a home run. He's got a 41 WRC plus, but mid-teens power output each of the last 2 years. Hunter Goodman is a sneaky catcher option on the DK slate. He's at the dead minimum price. He benefits from playing in Coors Field. He has 34. I want to say 34. There it is, 34. 34 home runs between 25 that he hit in AA and 9 that he hit in AAA this season. So that's a monster power hitter potentially lurking there. Sneaky cheap catcher for 2,000 on the DK slate. Doesn't land in the projections because he's not on the FanDuel slate, or at least wasn't earlier in the day. If you get him on FanDuel, you can play him over there. Just a very sneaky bat. You're home run hunting for the dead minimum at Coors Field. It's not the worst option in the world. Toglia, Brenton Doyle, also just kind of home run counting stat hunting, both below the Mendoza line. Atrocious WRC plus marks. The sum of their WRC plus marks is 35% below average for run creation if you put both of them together. Not great options off the bottom for the Rockies. Braves bats with a bullet. Just decide where you want to be relative to the field. Good luck putting them together with Kevin Gausman. Those are your top options overall. Both of those options, you want to decide where you're going to be relative to the field and go forth with enthusiasm on them. The Rockies side of things, so it's Braves bats, Rockies bats. I don't really want any Bryce Elder. The Rockies are pretty limited overall, though. They're more of a lower mid dart throw mixer with a little bit of ballpark based potential. But the pitcher's good. Pitcher doesn't get in all that much trouble all that often. And the team kind of sucks. 3 games to go. It is 5:52. All right. Brian Wu, as I said off the top, one of my favorite options on the board. Just a mid-5 inning projection. It looks great, and the model is very, very cheap overall. 25.3% strikeout rate with a 7.2% walk rate in 12 starts, 59 innings, a 12.3% swinging strike rate. 7.2% walks is a little higher than I want it, but the 31.5% hard hits, the 6.1% barrels are outstanding. 4.58 ERA, but a 4.13 xFIP. He only went 4 innings. He was on the IL for just like the minimum, like 10 days, 15 days. Came back on August 22nd. Just went 4. But I expect, especially with the Athletics on the other side, them carrying a 3.23 run total in Vegas, the Mariners as massive, massive favorites in this spot. I expect we're going to see a little bit of 5-inning depth at least from Wu here. So I like the upside. As I said, that's only a 5 and change innings projection. Has room to go beyond it with a few bonus strikeouts. Low end Athletics lineup. We've talked over the last couple of days about a lot of the premium contact they're showing lately, though. So there are some dangerous threats to them for individual upside. Home run or 2. A little bit of a threat there, but not much. Not one that's overly worth stacking for anything other than a hedge position, a value play. They are very, very cheap. If you're going to Athletics bats, you definitely want to include Ryan Noda, Zach Geloff, and Seth Brown off the top, and then probably also Brent Rooker, and then you can decide between any of these guys at the bottom for DK purposes. But you're just looking to roster this premium contact, right? It's these 4 guys and these 2 guys with double-digit barrel rates, hard hit rates in the 40s. Those are your interesting players. Noda, Geloff, Brown, Rooker, Shea Langoliers, Lawrence Butler. That's really that lineup up and down. Jonah Bride, Nick Allen, and Tony Kemp are, at best, really lousy mix-in plays. Seth Brown's got 11 home runs in 295. Brent Rooker's got 22 with a 224 ISO, a 122 WRC plus, and 423 tries. Zach Geloff, very, very good, but kind of high-priced. 10 home runs, 8 steals, a 152 WRC plus in his first 165 plate appearances in the show. Obviously, we're paying a tax for what he's done already, as opposed to projectable pricing for what he's going to do, but looks very good. Ryan Noda gets on base at a great clip, has good lefty pop, 12 home runs, a 386 on base, a 134 WRC plus over 370 plate appearances, 3,200, 2,900. I like that option a lot if I'm going to athletic stacks. I just greatly prefer Brian Wu for 79, 78. So big part of my plans over here, very limited part of my plans over here, not a part of my plans right here. 53-62. I don't think you're even throwing value darts with Kyle Muller. I know there are a lot of strikeouts in this Mariners lineup, but Muller just hasn't shown it at the major league level yet. 7.28 ERA, a 5.30 xFIP, striking out 15.1, walking 10.6, giving up all this premium contact, almost 92 miles an hour of exit velo, pushing nearly a 50% hard hit rate. That's really bad. 11.5% barrels is pretty bad. 3.87% hard home runs. This actually, as high as it is, seems a little bit lucky for all this premium contact. I think we're taking Mariners. I think you can go potentially run off and hide with some Mariner stacks. If you can get them Mariners and Braves, that would be killer. But I think the Mariners pair fairly well with like the Orioles. I think they pair fairly well with a lot of these teams. 7th overall by fantasy point projections and a lot of affordable bats for all the upside. We have this lineup. Let me grab it. Seattle. At least I won't have to update a lot of lineups at the end of the show, which is good. Saves me a little time. JP Crawford, dynamite option from the leadoff spot, 129 WRC plus, getting on base at a 382 clip. Lefty, I don't really care about it against this lefty. We're not looking for major power upside from JP Crawford. Get on first base 3 times and let the other guys drive you in. Julio, 6,000, 4,700. Relative to where some of the Braves are priced, that's cheap. It's obviously expensive on the whole. He's gotten himself up to 281, 342, 472. He was hitting like the low 260s like 2 weeks ago. 23 home runs, 35 steals, a 127 WRC plus, looking a hell of a lot like the Julio who won the AL Rookie of the Year last year at this point. 13.2% barrels, 44.5% hard hits for Eugenio Suarez, 4,500, 2,900, very cheap on both sites. 18 homers this year, only a 154 ISO. The home run total's okay. He was a 220-ish ISO each of the last 2 years with 31 home runs each of the last 2 years. Obviously not hitting for the exact same amount of power, but still plenty of premium contact, plenty of upside for 4,500, 2,900. Teoscar Hernandez, 4,300, 3,100. He's still way underpriced. He's up to 262, 307, 452. He's got 22 home runs, 190 ISO, 109 WRC plus. That is too cheap. 49.1% hard hits, 14.6% barrels. He's been a big part of their surge. Ty France, mediocre season, 4,000, 2,700, playable part, 10 home runs, a 106 WRC plus. Dylan Moore, 3,300, 2,400, triple position on FanDuel, dual position on DK, 105 plate appearances, been effective, 37% better than average, 7 home runs on the board and an odd output of power, 24.1% barrels, 44.4% hard hits, not exactly who Dylan Moore is, but he did have a good barrel rate last year. How many plate appearances was that? 255 plate appearances last year, 6 home runs, so 1 fewer than he's hitting 105 this year. Just a couple instances where he put bat on ball well rather than a major power outbreak. But for cheap pricing, I think he's playable. Dominic Canzone, Jose Caballero, playable parts late in the lineup. Caballero gets on base very well, a 110 WRC plus, a 369 on base percentage, over 249 plate appearances. Canzone's been interesting. 3 home runs, 1 stolen base in 111 plate appearances, and putting bat on ball pretty effectively for 3,200, 2,200. Interesting little value play in the outfield. Brian O'Keefe, 2,500, 22,000. I don't know a thing about him. 11 plate appearances so far. Has he been in the show? 4 plate appearances last year. Hasn't done anything with his 15 plate appearances. Oh, what the hell. Come on, you're going to ding me for the apostrophe Fangraphs? Jerks. I love you, Fangraphs. Oh, Brian O'Keefe's 30 years old. How about that? So it's Crash Davis. Mid-teens power throughout the minors, so not even Crash Davis power. 22 home runs and 378 plate appearances at AAA as a 29-year-old this year. Happy 30th birthday to him just a couple weeks ago on the 15th of July. 13 home runs, 11, 13 going back in time over the last few years. Actually, no, 2021, it was 24 home runs across AA and AAA, but again, as a 27-year-old. Limited option. We're talking about a 9th hitting catcher on the Mariners at 5.59. That makes sense. Athletics side, we talked about. Brian Wu, we talked about. So Brian Wu, Mariners bats basically in a tie at the top of the rankings for this game. And then no real love, maybe some hedge positions around the premium contact, the power bats for the Athletics, but very limited doses. They probably make a better second stack than a prime stack. Maybe you grab 2 or 3 of the power bats on DK. They're very cheap, but limited appeal for the Athletics side. Cincinnati Reds, San Francisco Giants. The Reds lineup is in. Giants lineup is not. At the top of the show, I talked about Kyle Harrison. For those who were not here, he projects out very well on this slate. He was trying to get out of the box entirely. I think he's limited to 5 innings. I'm not going to put a pitch count number on it, but it's lurking somewhere in the 75 to 80 range. But I do think there's potential for him to throw 85 if he needs it to get through 5. I think their goal is to get him through 5. Just trying to parse what they were saying about this spot. But they did specifically say, I don't want to give a number, but it's probably 70. They said exactly what I said, basically. They didn't name 5 innings, but they said we'd like to see him, continue to develop and get through a handful of hitters, but we are going to cap him a little. Even with a 4.5 inning projection, he projects out as a playable part at 6,500, 6,900. I'm just hesitant to recommend it. He's one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. He's got a very high strikeout matchup with the Reds on the other side. It's a version of the Reds lineup that has Noelvi Marte leading off, Nick Senzel hitting second, no Matt McClain, no Joey Votto, obviously because he's on the IL now, Ellie De La Cruz, as good as he is talent-wise, 11 home runs, 22 steals, sitting only at a 90 WRC plus, 34.5% strikeouts. That's gettable. Spencer Steer, 5,000, 3,000 in the middle of the lineup is a playable part. Christian Encarnacion Strand is a playable part. A lot of these guys strike out at a pretty aggressive clip, though. Several of these guys were just in the minor leagues along with Kyle Harrison. So I do think there's a little bit of playability there. Much more so on DK as an SP2 dart at 6,500. You're just shooting for, even if he goes 4, maybe he books you enough strikeouts to get you there for the price. It's not great given the limitation, but a very, very good young pitcher who, kind of on the board. I couldn't find a way to get him off the board, even putting my thumb on the scale. Andrew Abbott on the other side, as I think it was Larry maybe earlier in the show was referring to, 3.16 ERA, but a 4.48 xFIP. This has gotten a little bit better. The premium contact has not been great. 9% barrels, 42.6% hard hits, pushing 91 plus miles an hour of exit velo. We know that's targetable. 3.46% home runs. He's been a little lucky to keep it to that low a home run rate, honestly. I do think there's potential that the Giants could get him on the right night, but he is a pretty effective pitcher overall. 26.8% strikeout rate, 8.9% walks is a little bit high, 10.9% swinging though. Pretty good strikeout rate, pretty good swinging strike rate to throw up against a Giants lineup that does have a fair amount of strikeouts in it. 24.4% for the projected lineup here. That's carried a little bit by Elio Ramos at 32% over only 50 plate appearances, of course, but it's also cut down by Wilmer Flores at 14.3%. Obviously, his is a full sample. This is a hitter that we have to fear if we're going to Andrew Abbott. We know that Wilmer has made a career out of obliterating left-hand pitching. He's also having the best season on this team. 19 home runs at 242 ISO, 143 WRC plus in 349 plate appearances. He slots in at first or third for 4,000 on DK, first, second, or third for only 3,000 on FanDuel. This is a bargain bat. So I like Wilmer. If you're building giant stacks, I think you start with Wilmer. You probably click Tyler Estrada in there next. And then you've got some choices to make because J.D. Davis has cooled badly. Most of his production this year actually came against fellow righties, and he's dipped all the way down to 246, 323, 406, only 102 WRC plus. He's been at 15 home runs or thereabouts for seemingly half the season at this point. 45.5% hard hits, 9.7% barrels is still good. He was looking like a big-time breakout season was in play. Didn't really deliver on that early season promise. Pat Bailey, limited option at catcher. Okay contact profile, 6 home runs in 280 plate appearances, but really took a dip after a couple of weeks being people's favorite value catcher there when he first started. Paul DeJong made his way to this team. He's got 14 home runs. Most of them came with the Cardinals. Stopped off in Toronto briefly. Now in San Francisco, 156 ISO, a 71 WRC plus. Ramos, Schmidt, Matos, cheap mix-in options if you're stacking Giants, but I really don't like this spot for the Giants stack. I think it feeds upside to the Andrew Abbott play. Abbott's really expensive. That's the thing about the play. He obviously projects well. The projection warrants the salary, but obviously he's got to deliver. 10-3, 98. I think he's in play. I do think that the projection is real. I think it's realistic talent, realistic ability. It's probably a little shakier than some of the other spots on the board. It's probably one of the ones I'm going to be a little bit more cautious about, a little bit more hesitant about, as you can figure out as I'm trying to explain how I feel about it. But I do think it's a very playable part of the slate in this matchup. If you're stacking Reds, Marte for 28-23 is interesting. Multi-position, a lot of multi-position guys on this board, but taking McClain out of the lineup is a major downgrade. He's been very, very good for this team. Senzel, not the same option. 220, 289, 378, a 75 WRC plus. Does have 10 home runs, 5 steals, 273 plate appearances. Once upon a time, one of the leading prospects in all of baseball, but never became that guy and has been in and out of the lineup like crazy the last few years. Steer is having a good year in the heart of the lineup. Encarnacion Strand had a great season at AAA. Slow to catch on so far at the major league level, but I do think there's tons and tons and tons of talent there. Maybe it takes till next year before he really starts delivering, but 46.4% barrels going up against a rookie pitcher. I do think there's potential there. Friedel having a pretty good year, 11 homers, 24 steals. More of a correlated scoring guy. Typically, we've seen him more often in the leadoff role. I kind of like him better up there. Fairchild, Malley, Hopkins, mix and match options at best from the bottom of the lineup. This is the last game, right? This is the last game. We have the Diamondbacks lineup. We do not have the Dodgers lineup. So like we talked about off the top, Zach Gallen not really drawing his typical Zach Gallen projection. This is one of the lower projections I remember for him all season, even against good teams. He typically projects out fairly well. Given that he costs 10.5, 10.7 with a mid-board type projection, I don't know how much I naturally get to him. I'll probably put my thumb on the scale and just say, hey, I need at least 10 shares of him, 15 shares to get to 10% or whatever. But yeah, not great. 26.8% strikeouts is excellent. 3.11 ERA is excellent. 3.43 xFIP is excellent. Only a 2.40% home run rate, despite honestly quite a bit of premium contact, which is feeding a little bit of home run potential for the Dodgers. That's maybe where he runs into a little bit of trouble here. I think it's just more of a good pitcher meets good lineup, and both collide and fall off to the sides and don't really matter and impact the slate all that much. But if I had to pick a side of it, which I do, well, I don't have to, but I will. I think I'm taking the Dodgers bats. They came in with a 4.63 implied run total, so Vegas is seeing it kind of similarly. At least Vegas justifies saying that it's a danger spot for Zach Gallen, I think. You got Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith leading the team for the home run potential. Max Muncy at 10.82, Mookie at 11.81. Freddie Freeman's got 23 home runs and a 240 ISO to go with his 341, 417, 581 outrageous triple slash. Mookie's got a 315, 407, 611. Getting your first two hitters on base when they have all this capability, and they get on base at well over a 400 clip for both of them, that's just bananas. This team is so good. Muncy in the heart of the lineup for 49.34. Very, very cheap for his power potential. 30 home runs at 275 ISO, above the magic number for home run potential in this specific matchup. 16.3% barrels, 47.5% hard hits. Maybe Zach Gallen strikes him out 3 times, but multi-home run upside on the right day for Max Muncy. Peralta, Hayward, Outman, the run of lefty outfielders that we like for such cheap prices. It's just an everyday, every time they're in the lineup together, or when you get 2 of them, 1 of them, whatever, they mix and match very, very well with the top 4 hitters in the lineup. When JD's here, it's the top 5 hitters in the lineup. They're all cheap. They all have a little bit of power potential at the plate. Okay marks for run creation. Oddly, the guy with the best triple slash, or the best batting average, has the worst run creation mark. Just goes to show you how much more important on base percentage is than batting average. These guys create runs, this guy not so much. These guys obviously have hit for a little bit more power. When you get to Outman, he's got 16 homers and 14 steals, so he's got a little bit of speed to go with the power, but just very, very good lefty options there. Michael Busch, Miguel Rojas, more mix and match quality there. On the Dodgers side, Bobby Miller, 8,800, 8,500. Projects very similarly actually to his opponent on the other side, and kind of lands similarly on my board in that I believe in the talent. I believe that projection is not off, but I don't think he's necessarily priced appropriately for this matchup and for how this entire board looks. 8,800, 8,500, he should be probably a little cheaper given a deep slate, a lot of options to work with. But overall, excellent stuff. 22.2% strikeout rate with room to grow going forward in the next couple of years. A 2.07% home run rate on only 6.4% barrels. 3.86 ERA, a 4.0 xFIP. He's been very, very good. It's just these guys are similar to similar on both sides. They're both these teams very good at limiting strikeouts. They both have power. The Dodgers have more. They both have run creation skills. The Dodgers have more. They both have great on-base skills. The Dodgers have more. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Tommy Pham, Christian Walker. Those are your top 4 priority bats off the top for the Diamondbacks. They're easy enough to get to. More in the value zone on FanDuel, given that Pham is still so cheap. Given that Christian Walker is only a $3,600 option. 33 for Ketel Marte is way too cheap. I guess Ozzie Albies isn't too cheap, but his price at Coors Field, given that Ketel Marte only costs 33. Marte's got 21 homers, a 206 ISO, 125 WRC+, a very strong triple slash. Pham, very good for counting stats, 13 homers, 17 steals, a 118 WRC+. Excellent option hitting third in that lineup. Corbin Carroll hit his 22nd home run, stole his 40th base in recent games. Basically in the last week or so, he had been stuck at 21 home runs. Even as he's cooled, he's still a dynamite option off the top. Down to 5,600 on the DK slate, 39 on FanDuel. Still pricey, but well worth getting to. Excuse me. Alec Thomas, 2,600, 2,200, climbing the lineup today. Mid-range pop, little bit of speed, below average run creation. Lourdes Gurriel, tons of power, 20 home runs, a 206 ISO, 103 WRC+. The triple slash is down this year, but the power's there, 4,100, 2,900. It's a good sneaky option hitting 6th today. Gabriel Moreno, playable part at catcher. 5 home runs, a 282, 325, 397 triple slash in 286 plate appearances for only 2,500, 2,100. That's a playable catcher on both sides. Jace Peterson, mix and match option for a little bit of lefty pop. Sneaky at third base, 3,300. Like him better at second base, where I can get him at 2,300 on the FanDuel slate. And then Geraldo Perdomo for 3,800, 2,700. For all his ups and downs, still getting on at a 371 clip overall for the season, 114 WRC+. That brings us to 6:11 and the end of the show. Home run board. Real quick. Matt Olson, top of the board, 18.1 in Coors Field. Obviously, you got to pay through the nose to get to him. Got to pay through the nose to get to everybody from Atlanta, but they're well worth it. The Texas bats, like I said, second and third on the board, even with those Atlanta bats in Coors Field. So we like that opportunity quite a bit. Adolis Garcia, the home run pick of the day. Corey Seager was the home run pick from the Rangers in the whole list because I needed to use them both. Davis Schneider, I didn't notice that when we were talking about that spot. Probably a little bit of small sample creeping in there, but that's an interesting spot for the cheap pricing on both sides. Was he in the lineup? Maybe that's why. Maybe he wasn't in the lineup. He was in the lineup. He's hitting cleanup today. That's an interesting spot for David Schneider. Blue Jays were pulling a little bit of power potential for the matchup against Josiah Gray. Still enough of the past performance in there. Lubob as a one-off potentially in a spot that we like for pitching with Grayson Rodriguez on the other side. Rafi Devers, we talked about really liking that Boston spot. Obviously, their leading power hitter. Alvarez, we talked about liking that Houston spot on the other side of that Boston game. So I like that quite a bit. Some of the Dodgers mixing in down here. Some Diamondbacks mixing in down here. But it's kind of straightforward where the power is today. Outside of the outlier here, a little bit of an outlier there. Pitching board, we talked about it. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to try and get out of here. If you need the full breakdown, rewind to the beginning of the show because I did go down through the entire board. But let me put a cutoff on it at least. Cutoff point is here with Kopech. I don't think Kopech's overly playable at 73.63. I don't think I like anybody below him. I don't. This would be my cut line for playability. I would take these guys basically out of my pitching pool. That's probably what I'm going to do. Christian Javier probably makes it into the playing pool, but I don't think he makes it into lineups given how high priced he is for the limited projection on pitching against that Red Sox team. Everybody from here up is at least worth a couple value darts. Xavier Curry, given the price, the strikeout upside, worth a couple value darts. Gallen is difficult given the high pricing and the low projection and the terrible matchup against the Dodgers, but I do think he's in play. Mix-in option, not an option pitching at Coors Field, even if he projects like it. I think the price is a little bit too high. Tough matchup against the Astros, tough matchup against the Diamondbacks. I like him a lot. This is a question mark around the pitch count. So your true, real good options are, I think, those guys and that guy. Gausman, Wu, Abbott, Gray, Snell, Rodriguez, Kenta Maeda. Pitching priorities today. All right, guys. With that said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. Let me get out of here. 6:15, only blew past what I was trying to do by a half hour, but I appreciate everybody hanging out. It's always a blast to get through this. Always fun. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Follow on Twitter at rotoscouts. Jump into the Discord. Feel free to ask questions, talk. We'll get the football one up and running very, very soon. Discord is free. Everything is free. The site is rotoscouts. Good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. I'll see you tomorrow.